This 1895 photograph captures a Georgia cotton field, but the economic reality it displays dates back centuries. Enslaved people were high-value capital, and keeping hundreds of laborers captive to generate wealth required an expensive infrastructure of physical force. In 1712, a British slave owner named Willie Lynch arrived on the James River in Virginia, brought in to address a constant, costly threat: rebellion. Lynch claimed to have discovered a method to control enslaved populations for centuries. His proposal focused on division rather than brute strength, targeting specific characteristics like skin color, age, and gender to create internal conflict. This consultation marked a shift in the institution of slavery. The mechanism of control moved away from external containment and toward a system of psychological habits designed to replicate themselves within the community. Lynch instructed masters to identify the most respected black man on the plantation, publicly whipping and beating him in front of the entire community. The objective was humiliation. By degrading the strongest figure on the property in full view of his peers and family, the master demonstrated that no amount of physical strength or community respect could provide protection. When the strongest physical pillar is broken publicly, the collective will of everyone who looked to him for leadership is compromised. Physical chains were no longer the primary tool. The foundation for psychological dominance was set. This demonstration was designed to have a specific impact on the observers, particularly the man's family. Watching the destruction of the patriarch forced a choice between resistance and survival. This is where inherited trauma begins. Lynch's intended outcome was for the mother to raise her children to be submissive. She teaches them to avoid the strength of their father to protect them from his fate. This diagram shows how localized trauma can replicate. When a parent's primary goal is the survival of their child within a violent system, they inadvertently pass down the psychological conditioning of that system to the next generation. Once this internal fear is established, the physical tools of containment, like this iron collar and shackle, become secondary. The community's own survival instinct now maintains the master's order. The psychological fear was reinforced by a physical security system. Plantations utilized strict pass laws, organized slave patrols, and tracking hounds to ensure that any attempt at escape was met with immediate capture. To lock this programming in place, a spiritual filter was introduced in 1807. This is the Slave Bible, a version of scripture edited to provide a divine mandate for the existing racial hierarchy. Editors removed 90% of the Old Testament. Most notably, it cut the book of Exodus, entirely removing the story of liberation from bondage to ensure the narrative of escape was never read. The remaining text focused on obedience, using verses like Ephesians 6:5 to suggest that serving a master was a religious duty. By combining physical terror with a redacted spiritual mandate, the system attempted to make the desire for freedom appear as a sin. The mind was now as confined as the body. The end of legal slavery did not dismantle this architecture. As this sign from the Jim Crow era illustrates, the mechanisms of division simply evolved into new structural and legal barriers. This behavior is often described through the crabs in a barrel metaphor. It illustrates a survival instinct where a group, conditioned to fear anyone standing out, keeps members within established boundaries. This self-policing occurs because the system punished the entire group for one rebel, making individual progress a collective risk. These echoes appear today in the form of colorism, which was a specific tactic Lynch suggested to foster distrust between light and dark skin. It also appears in the high rates of family fragmentation, following centuries of a system that intentionally rewarded the disruption of the bond between black men and women. These modern social divisions are often seen as organic cultural failures. However, they align with historical directives designed in 1712 to ensure the community remained too fragmented to challenge the architecture that divided them. Resistance to this system has always existed. Harriet Tubman did not just escape, she actively dismantled the board by removing pieces from it, proving the plantation's rules could be broken. In the 20th century, leaders like Malcolm X argued that physical freedom was meaningless without psychological liberation. Despite their different approaches, these figures all prioritized the restoration of self-worth as the only way to exit the game. This process requires mental decoupling. the conscious rejection of the slave Bible's edits, and the Lynch Protocol's focus on division. Applying the 80-20 rule to this psychological landscape suggests that while many are still caught in reactive survival modes, a smaller group is focused on building new infrastructure, economic and educational systems that make the old rules irrelevant. The historical validity of the Lynch letter is often debated, but the psychological architecture of division is visible in the results. That system only retains power as long as its rules are followed. Breaking the cycle starts with the decision to stop playing by them.